Okay, good morning, everybody. This morning's topic is an interesting one, I think. The issue of rabbinic malpractice. Is there such a thing? What are the limits of liability? And what situations fall under this category? Now, there are rabbis and there are rabbis. There are rabbis who are teachers. There are rabbis who are spiritual advisors. There are rabbis who give out advice. There's all types of different types of rabbis. When you go, there's two questions to deal with. Number one, within a halakhic framework, if I go to a rabbi with a shaila and he gives me the wrong answer, is he liable? Can I sue the rabbi if he gives me the wrong answer? If I go to a rabbi and I say, I'm traveling to Yechupitz someplace, and the caterer there is so forth and so on, can I eat from this person's food? And the rabbi says, no problem, I checked it out. And it turns out that the hashgacha was not reliable. Can I sue? If the rabbi gives you, in Hasidic circles, they go to the rabbi for everything. Every possible question you could have. Personal issues, marital issues, business, finance, investments. And so you go to the Rebbe and you say, I have an opportunity to invest X amount of money in this business. And the Rebbe says, good idea, invest the money, and the guy loses it all. Again, there are certain rabbis who have expertise in certain areas. Lubavitcher Rebbe was an unusual man, and he had a tremendous breadth of knowledge in so many areas that you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't believe. If you needed a specialist in whatever disease it might be, and you were stuck in the middle of nowhere in Europe someplace, he would tell you who to contact. It's the most amazing thing in the world. And I've seen this happen, where he knew who to contact. Nobody can get an appointment with this doctor for 2 years in advance. The Rebbe said, see this person, you got right in. There are individuals, but he's very unique. He was a very unique person. But so the whole issue of professional liability is a serious issue, and it didn't become an actual legal issue until 1979, when certain laws were passed allowing you to sue a clergyman for bad advice. You go to a rabbi with a shaila, kosher treif, mutter, osur, based on the halakhic understanding of the sources, he'll give you an answer. But what if you go to the rabbi for marital counseling or some personal advice, and he gives you the wrong advice or bad advice? What kind of liability is there, if any? Not every rabbi, as brilliant and as kind and knowledgeable, understanding as they might be, but not every rabbi is capable or qualified to be a social worker or a psychologist or a guidance person or a therapist. Yet, we know that people go to rabbis with all types of personal problems and marital issues and so forth and so on, and rabbis spend countless hours with people, giving advice, helping them work through whatever issues there are. And thank God, most of the time, their advice is good advice. But what if the rabbi makes a mistake and somebody says, this is not what I bargained for? Is there any type of legal liability in the American court system and in the halakhic system? Can I go to a din Torah and say the rabbi gave me bad advice and it caused X, Y, and Z to happen? And this is a very, very delicate issue because, how can I say this nicely? Not every rabbi is willing to say, you should really go see a therapist. I'm not the person to talk to. Somebody comes to the rabbi for advice. Most rabbis will give that advice, and they have the best intentions in the world. I'm not saying that they don't. But it takes a special type of a rabbi to say, you know what? I'm not equipped to deal with this issue. Go see a psychologist or psychiatrist or a social worker who is trained to deal with this thing. Now, if you happen to have a rabbi who was also a clinician, that's fine. There was a famous Hasidic rabbi who written up in Time magazine when he went to medical school with his beard and payas and so forth, Rabbi Twersky, Olav Shalom, and he became a world-renowned psychiatrist in the field of addiction. Hasidic Rebbe, and he published Svarim, and he lived in Muncie when he retired, and but that was it. He went through medical school. He was a licensed psychiatrist. That's different. He was a Hasidic Rebbe, but he was a licensed therapist. Most rabbis are not. And there are a number of cases of clergy malpractice in the court system. And when it was initially brought to the courts, it was dismissed on religious freedom grounds. Parents will sue a rabbi over bad advice they gave to their child about doing something or not doing something. And you have a conflict between religious freedom and professional accountability. And that's a difficult question. And these are issues that are, I guess, sacrosanct in American legal theory, but also in halakhic theory also. Yeah. I'm sorry? Shidduchim, yeah. Well, that, again, it depends to what extent the rabbi was influential in setting up the shidduch. If the shidduch doesn't work out, can you sue the rabbi for setting it up? Interesting question. I think probably not, because there are too many human relation issues involved there.
Unless you do something that he would fight.
I'm sorry?
Unless you do something that he would fight.
Well, again, you have to be honest in doing these things. And sometimes, in order to make the shidduch, they'll not say certain things about a person that the other person should know about. There would probably be legal liability there. It's a very gray area. I had a situation, I was involved in a Din Torah last year, where I sued somebody. And until we decided which Din Torah to go to, because he didn't want to go to this one, didn't want to go to that. We finally found a Din Torah, went to a Din Torah, and I wanted X amount of money from this situation. And they ruled in my favor on one issue, but not in the other issue. So I got some money, but not all that I was looking for. And clearly, there was a problem there because the second issue that I was suing this person for in a Din Torah contravened American law. The Beis Din issued a psak that was against American law. What do I do? So I went to Rav Willig. We discussed this, and he said, leave it alone. So all right, I respect Rav Willig. I left it alone, but I was clearly very upset because I felt I was owed a lot more. So I got part of what I wanted, but not all of it. It was two different issues. All right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I've heard this about Twersky. He's treating a priest. I don't know if you heard the story.
No.
For addiction. He was drinking alcohol.
Right, right.
So when he gave with the sacraments, he couldn't get it.
Right.
So Rabbi Twersky says, you know what?
Use grape juice.
Use grape juice.
Yeah.
So went all the way up, I think, to the Pope. And the Pope said, if the Jewish people can do it,
You could do it.
we
Okay,
can.
good. No, but he was very highly regarded, Twersky, as a therapist. Okay, 1979 was when the courts, American courts, and insurance companies recognized this issue of pastoral malpractice, and they began issuing malpractice insurance. And it's something that every clergyman should have, whether he's a rabbi or as a school principal. I had malpractice insurance. I was sued once, actually. I was sued once. There was a teacher who was an aide in kindergarten. And I hired her to come back next year. And when she signed her contract in May, she knew she was pregnant. Now, normally that's not a liability. However, if you are an aide in kindergarten, it's a very strenuous, physically demanding job. Picking up kids, bending over, sitting on the ground, it's a very strenuous job. So when I found out about it, I simply changed her position to an aide in second grade, which I thought was fair. She sued me because she wanted to be an aide in kindergarten, and she felt she was capable of doing it. I mean, I won the case, but the point is, rabbis, principals, even though the cases may not necessarily make sense, rabbis should have malpractice insurance. And this became the law in 1979, based on some rabbis, some priests being sued. The question exists not only in secular court, but in a Bezdin. Can a rabbi be brought to a din Torah for giving bad advice, or what is assumed to be or interpreted to be bad advice? So there are those who would say that pastoral counseling is a very uniquely spiritual and religious activity with no secular psychotherapeutic counterpart, which case it's religion, and therefore it's protected by the First Amendment, and you can't sue. However, the Supreme Court ruled in Lemon versus Kurtzman, if you want to look it up, that it's problematic, but nevertheless you can sue a clergyman, and that's why this issue has come up. There are a fascinating number of cases here. You have, it was one case, Cantwell versus Connecticut, where the court held that there are two concepts here: freedom to believe and freedom to act. The freedom to believe is absolute. The freedom to act cannot be. And therefore, crime is no less odious, I'm reading from the court decision, because sanctioned by what any particular sect may designate as religion. So even though it may be protected under religious understanding, if it violates the law, it violates the law. And therefore, you can sue. But other cases, the California Supreme Court dismissed similar cases, arguing that the legal duty of care imposed upon licensed counselors does not apply to the clergy. The clergyman can always say, the advice that I'm giving is within a religious context, and the court doesn't want to touch that. So you have this tension here, but you do have a lot of halakhic implications of religious malpractice. For example, we've heard of cases occasionally where a butcher was using non-kosher meat instead of kosher meat, sneaking it in. Nobody was looking. Who's responsible? Is it the butcher or is it the mashgiach? The mashgiach's job is to make sure that the meat that comes in and out of that shop, and he's supposed to have the keys, is kosher. And it was found out that the guy was selling treif. So who's responsible to pay for all the new pots and pans and dishes that all the consumers have to throw out because of this treif meat that they were cooking and eating? The butcher or the Rav HaMachshir?
Both.
Probably both. But the point is, this is a case where there is some definite legal liability in a religious issue. And again, if somebody is guilty and there's a financial loss, there's a liability. The same thing is true in monetary issues. If two people have a machlok, you owe me money, or I don't owe you money. I paid you, or you didn't pay me. and a rabbi makes a decision, you have to pay that person. How enforceable is that particular rabbinic decision in a legal course? And again, religion and secular law have an uneasy relationship because the courts rarely want to get involved in what's considered a religious dispute. But if something is more than religious dispute and there's real dollars involved, or personal status involved, or property involved, it becomes very, very clear, problematic. The Shulchan Aruch and Choshen Mishpat codifies the parameters of judicial mispractice. And if a rabbi's decision goes against a clear halacha, then the decision is reversed and the proper judgment is enforced. Again, how is this done in practicality? In my own personal case, I was just told, leave it alone. Could I have enforced it? Could I have pushed the issue? Possibly. I'm going to say probably, but possibly. But it would have been a messy thing, and the judge involved, a prominent rabbi, would have been dragged through the mud because he made a mistake. So there are liabilities of rabbis as judges if they misinterpret or misapply the halacha, which causes a financial loss. How to implement it is an issue. The Ramah paskins very clearly that rabbis are liable for unrecoverable damages caused by their misapplication of the halacha. And that's why, there are two types of smicha. There's most rabbis get a smicha called Yora Yora, which is based on knowledge of kashrus and basic laws of Orach Chaim, simple halachos. There's a higher level of smicha, which dayanim have to have, called yodin yodin, which means they know property law, casualty law, monetary, all these financial issues based on Choshen Mishpat, which is much more complicated and much more difficult. And the very few rabbis have the yodin yodin classification. Yet, most rabbis, I would assume, many rabbis for sure, give out advice on monetary issues. People come to them for advice and they give advice instead of saying, I'm not real. There are very few rabbis, unfortunately, who will say, I'm not really qualified to answer your question. If it's illegal, if it's a halakhic shaila and it's complicated, they'll say, I'll check with my Rebbe or a greater authority. But in personal issues, in guidance issues, marital issues, very few rabbis will say, you really should see a therapist. I'm not the person to talk to about this. And this is an area rabbis need to be properly trained. And just because you're a rabbi doesn't always mean you're competent to deal in areas that social workers are trained to deal with, that psychologists, psychiatrists are trained to deal with. And this is fairly clear-cut in the halacha. Giving bad advice falls under lo sitein mikshol. You can't place a stumbling block in front of the blind. That's the category that bad advice falls under, according to many poskim. There's a lot of fascinating halachos in terms of case history here, whether it's actionable in a Jewish court or not. Part of the issue, many people, perhaps rightly so, have tremendous faith in their rabbis. And I remember for the short time that I was in the rabbinate, I was a 25-year-old pisher with a congregation of 1,500 people, and people came to me with all kinds of questions. What do I know about life? How do I give it? And they can't. No, again, many times I was able to help them out just by listening to them more than anything else. A rabbi's greatest talent is to know when to keep your mouth shut. And I just sat there and I listened. I had a dentist in my congregation who was going through a divorce. So his wife would come in and tell me her story. And then when I'm in the dentist chair and I can't even speak, my mouth is full of things, he would tell me his story. And I just listened. I mean, my main concern was their 5-year-old kid. Unfortunately, in divorce cases, it's the children who suffer. But I was a kid, but I was a rabbi. I remember somebody came into the office once and said, I need to see Rabbi Greene. So I said to that person, that's his office over there. He'll be there in a minute. And then 5 minutes later, I come into the office. She was expecting some older gentleman with a beard, perhaps. But people, you have the title rabbi, and people think once you're a rabbi, you know everything. And the truth of the matter is, rabbis put on their pants one leg at a time. They're people like anybody else, and they don't always have the requisite knowledge to deal with issues. And it's difficult for a rabbi to admit, any human being actually, what they don't know. Knowing a person's limitations is a serious issue. And sometimes the results of bad advice can be quite harmful. It can result in monetary loss, financial loss. It can result in a bad relationship becoming worse. There could be harm for children. There are so many issues that, again, some rabbis are very competent and their life experience allows them to be in a position after 50 years in the rabbinate to have seen it all and to give good advice. But if you're just starting out in the rabbinate or you don't have an expertise in a certain area, malpractice is a serious issue because you could give bad advice, people can get hurt, people can lose money, relationships can be disrupted. And this is why every rabbi should have malpractice insurance. And they have it, it's available. Clergy malpractice is available for educators, for rabbis. And, when I first took it out, and I told my colleagues about it, they said, who ever heard of malpractice insurance for principals? Ridiculous. But more and more people, unfortunately, who didn't have it, got hurt in the process. And we are in a very litigious society. And knowing when to say, I don't know, is a tremendous, tremendous skill that not everybody has. Again, if it's a halakhic shaila and you're not really sure, you can always look it up or ask somebody who is more knowledgeable than you. And you say, I'll get back to you tomorrow, or I'll get back to you next week and I'll talk to so-and-so. That's a halakhic question. But a couple is sitting in front of you for marital advice, or a parent is sitting in front of you who has a problem with a kid, whatever the situation might be. Unless you are really knowledgeable in giving advice that is psychologically or medically sound advice, simply say, you know what, maybe you ought to see a professional counselor, a social worker, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. And not every rabbi is always able to do that. And that could lead to trouble down the line. So rabbinical malpractice is an issue. There are people who unfortunately have gotten bad advice, been hurt by it. And the most important advice that a rabbi can give somebody is to tell them, I'm not really the person to talk to. And that sometimes is very difficult for a rabbi to do. Because after all, I'm your rabbi, you share confidences with me, you tell me things that no one else knows. I know things about you that nobody else knows, but I'm not really the person to help you out in this particular situation. And if things go bad, unfortunately, rabbis do get sued. Yes.
Well, if you have a question and you want to ask a rabbi, your rabbi may or may not have expertise in it, but you do know of a rabbi who does have expertise in it. It's not your rabbi.
Okay.
Can you go to that other rabbi?
Yeah, sure. Why not? But you're going to them not as a rabbi, going to them as a certified or licensed practitioner of whatever area it might be. Nothing wrong with that. And the same thing with doctors. You have your regular doctor. But if you need a specialist, you go to the specialist. It's the same thing. And there are specialists in human relations. So Nathan?
Yeah, Wally,
Yeah,
if a person who got advice that, or a person who got unkosher meat,
yeah.
and he was told that it was kosher, he thought it was kosher, has he committed an avera if he eats it?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
If a person is given meat that he thinks is kosher, like
Yes.
bought meat that he thinks is kosher, and
Yes.
it's not kosher, they found
Right.
later on it was not kosher, he ate the meat, has he committed an avera?
No, because he didn't do it knowingly. It was b'shogeg. I mean, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, he might have to bring a korban chatos for doing something accidentally. But today, a person that does something inadvertently and he didn't know any better, he's not liable. The question is can he sue the butcher for the price of replacing his cutlery and his silverware and his dishes, his pots and pans? And then you have a good case there.
Well, the best thing is not to know anything then.
Well, what you don't know can't hurt you, obviously. But when you find out about it, there are legal options.
Right.
Again, and whether you can kosher those dishes, this happens a few times, unfortunately. It happened a couple of times in Muncie and in Queens, where people got caught selling non-kosher meat, and the rabbis twisted themselves in and out to try to allow people to use their dishes, and it was a whole big to-do. But it's not a simple issue. So the bottom line is there is rabbinical malpractice. It does exist, and people have to, rabbis as well as their congregation, have to be careful about it to know when to go to the rabbi and when not to go to the rabbi. And the rabbis themselves have to know when to advise people to seek professional help, because again, if a rabbi is a licensed clinician and a social worker or a psychologist, that's fine. I know of a number of rabbis who have degrees in social work and psychology, and they use it in their rabbinical function. But I know when I was studying for the rabbinate at yeshiva, so every student had to get a master's degree in addition to smicha. That was the requirement. But you had options. You can get a master's degree. You can be in the kollel, the equivalent of a master's degree in the kollel. You can get a degree in education, or in social work, or in Judaica. All right? So if a person, in my case, I pursued a degree in Judaica. I got a master's degree in history. Did that make me capable of answering questions about marriage and divorce and giving advice about adoptions and all kinds of? It didn't. I can tell you stories of the questions that people came to me with. And sometimes people are very insistent that you have the answers because you're a rabbi. How could you not know the answer? I'll just conclude with one of my favorite stories. I lived in a building which had a swimming pool. And several times a week at night, I would go for a swim. And there was a sauna. It was very nice. So I come upstairs after swimming, and I'm ready to change out of my wet bathing suit and take a shower. And there's a woman sitting on my couch with my wife, sobbing terribly. And she had a serious question about why wouldn't her daughter name their new baby after her late husband? And I'm sitting there dripping wet in my bathing suit, trying not to get water all over my wife's couch, and with towels. And so for hours, I was sitting trying to console her, give her suggestions. Rabbis are put in all kinds of situations that are very, very difficult sometimes. Very difficult. And sometimes, in this case, I was able to help her out, or I tried to. But there are more serious issues. Well, no. So I said, no, maybe the different types of names they could use. It doesn't have to be the exact name. It could be English versus there's no halacha. You have to do that. But she wanted the baby to be named after her late husband. And I don't know, whatever the kid's name was, Menashe, Shmulik, whatever it may name, it didn't sound like a name that the kid wanted. The daughter wanted the name. So maybe you could change it to a similar name. maybe the English name. I gave it all, again, this was a question that I didn't have to refer out, thank you. But again, the most important thing was to give her aid and comfort, understand her, try to calm her down as I'm dripping wet on my couch in my living room. Because she heard there was a rabbi in the building. So she found me and whatever. But again, it's my heart goes out because rabbis sometimes have very, very thankless jobs. It's a very difficult job. And sometimes you get very, very, congregants can sometimes be very, very trying, can be very, very difficult. But you have to make them feel comfortable. Yeah.
So how obligated would someone be to accept the answer?
Oh,
Rabbi, can you seek a second opinion from?
so that's a very good question. Halachically, if you go to a rabbi for a psak, not advice, but psak, legal answer to a legal question, you have to accept the psak of that rabbi. You don't go shopping around for it. If you don't like it, you can't go to a different rabbi. And this is something, unfortunately, that people don't always do. They'll go to Rabbi X, and Rabbi X didn't give them the answer they were looking for, so they'll go to Rabbi Y. That's wrong. If you're going to a rabbi and you accept that rabbi's authority, then you have to accept what he tells you. You can't go shopping around. But, people do what people do. But in answer to your question, if you go to a rabbi with a question, then you are bound to accept in a question of halacha. If it's a question of guidance, maybe they had a little more leeway. If it's not a pure halachic question where the answer is crystal clear, and you go for advice, not necessarily a psak. The difference between advice and a psak is two different things. For a psak, you have to accept the rabbi. For advice, maybe you could ask somebody else, because it's a different category that you may not be comfortable with that particular. A psak, whether you like it or not, is a psak. It's a decision. You ask the question, this is the answer. Advice, you have a little bit more flexibility. Anything else? Yes, Michael.
I know there's so much specialized training as a chaplain to the clinical pastoral education.
Yes, clinical pastoral education is very important.
It's all different from clergy, and they treat you at a good comfort.
Yes, absolutely. We took supplemental rabbinic training, and part of it meant visiting. We went to Bellevue, we went to nursing homes. And rabbis have to be exposed and have to be trained, but unfortunately, it didn't give me a degree in clinical social work. But some people just learn by experience. But it's different if you've been in the rabbinate for 50 years, as a person who's a newly minted rabbi. Tremendous difference in terms of worldly knowledge and experience. And that's why rabbinic malpractice, unfortunately, is an issue. Okay? Hopefully nobody will have any problems that can't be resolved. Have a great day. Yes.
Well, I just want to mention that if a regular person takes a rabbi to a din Torah, his chances of winning are almost nil. Because I was one of 35 people who took a rabbi to a din Torah on multiple issues.
Yeah.
And not only did we lose everything except for one issue, the din Torah went above and beyond what they should have.
Okay. It depends who your interlocutor is. If you had a rabbi bringing the case for your side, maybe the outcome would have been different. I don't know. I don't know particulars of the case. But again,
Yeah, I can tell it to you privately. I wouldn't
look,
publicize it.
I understand. I fully understand and appreciate the issue. Lay people versus rabbis. I understand.
Yeah, it's like cops won't testify against other cops, and doctors won't against other doctors, and the rabbis stick together. All right, could be.
Wouldn't expect anything else.
Okay, have a great day, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yishem
you, Rabbi.
Adonai Rosh Hashanah Shlo Tov Chayinu. Did everybody have waffles or do we wash? Oh, do we wash? Amen. Amen. Thank you. Amen.
Yep, I have something real quick to add. You know, I always come after the
That's
fact.
okay.
And there's a legal principle. It's called Altman. But it's abbreviation, which means the ordinary, reasonable, prudent, and then you put in rabbi, and doctor. It kind of catches what you were talking about, what the practice is. And that's one of the first tests that a court rule on is. You were saying what the first qualification is when making the judgment.
Right?
To make sure nobody has anything in that refrigerator.
What last night's food was there?
When did it break? When did it break?